In this video, we're going to just define a few terms that you need to understand when studying statistics. So the first is a constant, which is a characteristic whose measurements never change over time. The best way to think about a constant is in terms of different sciences. So if you have the speed of light, the atomic weight of gold, gravitational force, these are all constants that cannot change and are known. On the other hand, there are variables. Variables are characteristics whose measurements can change from individual to individual or over time. So the big difference here is to make sure you understand that constants cannot change and variables do change. So when studying statistics, there are two types of variables, and this is important to understand, especially when you're working with data, so that you understand the type of data or the type of variables that you are studying. So the first type is a categorical variable. These are measurements that can vary but cannot be arranged in order of magnitude, so they cannot be ranked. So if you think about any type of survey you've taken where you fill out maybe your race, gender, education, maybe the geography of where you live, these types of questions are usually known as demographics, and they are categorical. You cannot rank race, you cannot rank gender, you cannot rank education. They are just categories that we all have to check off. On the other hand, there are quantitative variables, and these are actual measurements that vary in magnitude and can be ranked. So there are two types of quantitative variables. The first is discrete variables, and the best way to think about these are countable, and I try to emphasize to students that you should look for the words number of to help indicate a discrete number. And so some examples of this would be the number of cars in a parking lot or the number of students attending class. These types of variables you can actually count, and so these are discrete quantitative variables. On the other hand, there are continuous quantitative variables. These are calculated variables. So the best way to think about these are in terms of a rate, average, or a proportion. So if you want a few examples, your height can actually change over time, and this is something that you can measure or calculate. As for the speed of a car, you can think of it as miles per hour or kilometers per hour, which is a rate. The percentage of students that pass a test is known as a proportion. So again, if you think back to the different statistics and parameters that we discussed in the previous video, you can think of this as the proportion of success. How many students passed versus those that failed.